Winners take all. This concept was introduced by Thomas Friedman in his book called Lexus and the Olive Tree. It's a rather pessimistic yet sound argument that might make you think and believe that it has become impossible to become rich, to succeed nowadays. Obviously, by success I imply material acquisition, abundant wealth, purchasing power. When you have your own house and car, when you can afford high-end clothes or afford to spend every weekend at the country club, to send your kids to Oxford or Cambridge, the list goes on. However, in the age of globalization, under the new international system, we have a clear division: winners and losers, those who benefit and those who don't. Before I proceed, let me warn you, you may get depressed by the end of the video, so watch at your own risk. According to Friedman, today's global market, where trade barriers are reduced, the travel costs are slashed, and information flows cheaply and even freely across the borders, the top players in any field can cash in. They can reach the global audience and disproportionately reap the rewards. Globalization favors those who already had wealth, power, Oxford-level education, high-level skills, prosperous businesses by the time the global shift commenced. When those people finally got access to massive global marketplace, they were able to multiply what they already had. Think about it, only those who are capable of competing in a global market can truly benefit from the new system. They reap the benefits, whereas the rest have to work twice and 10 times as hard as the winners just to survive and keep up. The rest are losers, people who initially didn't have enough opportunities, or who were born in third world countries, those coming from lower or middle classes, those coming from rural areas where they don't have access to internet, those who can only compete in their local markets. Friedman points out that such dynamic leads to a much larger gap between winners and losers, between rich and poor. Imagine a horse racing which has already started. There are participants who showed up on time and began early, yet there are those who arrived late. There are those who haven't even reached the starting line. The riders have just found out that the race is going on today. Sure, they can still join and compete, but it's highly unlikely that they will catch up with the early starters. And it's not necessarily because some riders or horses are much tougher and more talented than others, although it might be true, but because of where and when they began the race. The difference between you and Elon Musk is that the latter's father owned an emerald mine in Zambia and could afford to send his son to the University of Pennsylvania and in Stanford. And you, well, you're not from the Musk family. Sorry, but I surmise you're not born into the wealth because, well, otherwise I wouldn't have even clicked on this kind of videos. Anyway, this wasn't emphasized by Friedman, this is just something that crossed my mind. Let's say you want to study at Stanford University. Why? Well, don't ask, just because. Maybe for job opportunities or privilege of attending one of the most prestigious universities in the world. So what are you going to do? Take a student loan and spend a quarter of your life paying it off? Or work day and night endlessly to save just to afford the tuition fee? On the other hand, Musk didn't have to do any of that because he could afford it from the very beginning. He arrived at the race on time. Well, he was and is more than just a Stanford graduate, but you get the idea. And again, it's not necessarily because he's a much tougher and trained horseback rider than you. Who knows, maybe you are better than him. What is more, with globalization, the gap between you and someone like him only gets wider and wider. And he keeps benefiting disproportionately, and day by day becomes more and more infeasible for people like you and me to accumulate as much wealth as the top 10% on earth. Now let's focus for a second on something Friedman mentioned, the gap between winners and losers. He argues that globalization led to increased inequalities both within countries and between them. So you see, it's not only about rich and poor people, but also rich and poor countries. Hence comes the dependency theory from international relations. I'm really getting ahead of myself, but its premise is that the global economy is structured in a way that benefits the core at the expense of the periphery, or in other words, benefits wealthy industrialized countries at the expense of poor developing ones. and the latter ones are locked in a cycle of dependency, supplying cheap materials and labor whilst importing expensive finished goods. Indeed, everything is interconnected. Likewise, at the societal and individual levels, we might be stuck in a similar cycle. Some have to work full-time, sometimes agree to lower salaries just to keep their job, sacrifice their personal lives, or spend 2/3 of their income on the latest smartphones or high-quality clothes. Well, because we might be the slaves of the modern system built on materialism and consumerism. Oh wait, you say you cannot afford the latest smartphone or quality clothes? No problem, just borrow money from the rich and then repay the debt with interest, making them richer and making yourself poorer? Yeah, I'm talking about credit cards. Again, you see how things are interconnected? You see the cycle? Friedman also discusses the groundswell of people wanting into the system because it offers better opportunities for better life than the alternatives. The core challenge remains the winners-take-all nature of globalization, exacerbated by unequal access to resources and technology, makes it inherently difficult for those without existing privilege or wealth to climb to the top and truly win in the global marketplace. I know how this might make you feel now. I warned you at the start. However, things aren't as hopeless as you might think. I personally don't fully agree with Friedman, and you also don't have to agree with him. His argument is just one among many others that can be challenged and disproved. Let's be honest, there are upsides of globalization. It opened up new opportunities that were previously unavailable. Besides, in fact, there are a lot of exemplary people who began from scratch, who were initially poor or lacked resources, yet still made it, became wealthy and successful. Stories like theirs give us hope. So don't despair. We have individual strength. And above all, we have God, the creator of the universe. For him, nothing is impossible, even granting people like us their financial security and wealth. Put your trust in God and put in the effort and keep moving forward. You got this.